March of 2018. I was there, I think we're part of the first team, so I'll get into some of the makeup of the team, but raise your hand, I guess, first, just to kind of get a show who was at any part of the Puerto Rico deployment, either in 2017 or during the recovery phase in 2018. So we got a few. I know a few were on the follow-up teams. So in discussion, feel free if there's things that you guys did different, which I'm sure you probably tweaked some things than how we did. So we did a lot of the recovery efforts. A lot of the short-term temporary repairs were done by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So we pulled a lot of their scope of works that they did and kind of worked off of those for the permanent repairs that were looked at. So quick overview, part of the first team, there were 4 licensed professional engineers they're looking for. So for the first team, it was all actually IHS SFC engineers. It was myself, well now Captain David Missoura, Commander Mike Tiermont, and Commander Tom Davis. Yeah. So we were pulled to do, basically we had to look at FEMA public assistance guidelines. So it was a huge manual. None of us were really familiar with it before, but like was kind of mentioned in the last presentation, we just, basically got in there and dug in the manual. Like's been mentioned, we're all engineers, we're problem solvers, we can figure things out as we go. So we just got in there and looked at what all the requirements were going to be. We linked up with Captain Miguel Cruz. He had been there long term, and that information, he's not an engineer, but that working with him was absolutely invaluable as far as, he's originally from Puerto Rico, I think he said, but just the local knowledge and all the contacts he had, it really helped us to focus on our mission of looking at all 63 facilities. There's a variety of them, labs, clinics, and so forth. But he handled a lot of the coordination and all that kind of stuff, so we could really focus in on what we were there to do, and that was to do all these assessments. So like I mentioned, we used, if there's information we could gather that was done previously, we used U.S. Army Corps of Engineer scope of work that a lot of times were done on, a common thing, as you can imagine, was roof damage was a common issue. So we'd look at that. Having a game plan coordination, so like I mentioned, Captain Cruz helped out with a lot of that. We had a female liaison that we worked with, and they provided, I know the question was asked about supplies. We really didn't have a lot of supplies we needed. And I'll get into some of that, how we came up with some of the estimates and so forth. The one thing we did need that we kind of had to think outside the box a little bit was when we looked through the PA guidelines, it had to be kind of approved estimating software, and the thing that came to mind was RS Means. We didn't have access to that the full 26 days we were there. What we were able to do is I called our facilities engineer I work with in Minot, was able to get a copy of that, and then Captain Missouri was able to get, I think, a copy from California maybe. So, we just did what had to be done to get, get the work done. So like I mentioned, 63 medical facilities. I think in Team 1 we maybe got through like the first 15 or 20. I think the follow-on teams probably were more efficient than us. Part of it was the higher priority facilities, which were ranked 1 through 10. I'd say probably the higher priority were larger facilities, and then it probably got to be smaller facilities as you went down the priority list. We did spend a few days, it felt like kind of spinning our wheels, but it really wasn't. We didn't do any assessments the first few days because we were just trying to kind of get our heads wrapped around, okay, what exactly is needed here, because you want to really get off on the right foot. You don't want to have to do things a second time. So we're asking a lot of questions. We tried working, so we actually we weren't set up at the JFO, we were set up, we were working for the Puerto Rican Department of Health, actually, on their behalf. So our mission was we had to do cost estimates for these permanent repairs. FEMA did their own cost repairs, and my understanding is they kind of compared the two and come up with some type of agreement on, like that particular facility, if it was a lab, what was going to be the agreed upon cost repair. this 50% rule I got here, so basically we looked at if a building was extremely damaged, went through the estimating process, if it was over 50% of what it would cost to just replace it, our recommendation was just to replace it. Because if you're going to spend 80% just to repair a facility compared to just replacing it, why not let's replace it? Because there's other issues that came up. Things are probably out of date, maybe as far as ADA compliance. There's all kinds of issues there that maybe need to be updated anyway, so it just makes more sense to replace it. Okay, so like I mentioned, the priority list, we have that game plan that was set for us. So we just started tackling it for Art, and I think the other teams probably did this too. So there's 4 of us who worked in teams of 2, and kind of our operation tempo was one team would go out in the field that day, the other team was back working on the estimate and the scope of work, and we just flip-flop every other day, and that worked out about right. The time it took to do that scope of work and the cost estimate and all the kind of supporting data took about a full day for 2 of us to do. The way we broke it up is, I worked a lot with Captain Missouri. He kind of really got into RSVs and got really up to speed on that. I kind of handled, when we go to a site, I take all the pictures and all the supporting documentation, work on the narrative or the report, and it just seemed to work out well. It took us both about the same amount of time to get done around the same time. So you kind of just figure that out, as you go, what kind of works and what doesn't. And I imagine the other teams probably had similar experience. I know with the team 2, the really nice thing is we have about a day and a half of overlap, so that was really critical to have that time to get the next team up to speed. Hey, here's what we did, here's some examples. And then for the 3rd team, I know there wasn't that overlap, but it was really beneficial, as I know we had a big conference call. I want to see Captain Harvey maybe set that up, because I think it was, the 3rd team might have been all IHS engineers maybe. I know that the 2nd team was 2 IHS and 2 EPA, but that was just really critical to have that overlap and discussion to really, so the other teams could hit the ground running. Like was kind of shown in the last slide, we have a master tracking spreadsheet. That was one thing that took a while to sift through. Was when we first showed up, I don't remember his name, he was there kind of long term as well, but there's a lot of information, but it didn't seem like in a super organized manner. So we got all that kind of up to speed, and I know the follow-on teams probably use that master tracking spreadsheet that I'll show briefly in the slide here. And again, we want to focus in on our specific mission, but also think big picture on how what you're doing ties into the overall picture. So here's just that master tracking spreadsheet. So it's kind of the base of the who, what, when, where, like you'd want to have. The priority, in this case, I just went right from the top. The location, like was mentioned about the lat long, we even had issues on a few. It wasn't a major issue, but making sure the GPS coordinates are correct is absolutely critical. Who completed the work, so if there's questions later on, they know who to contact. The general issues, and then the pending work, and then I don't really get into the details of showing the estimates, but basically our summary if it was a repair or replace. I don't remember 100% sure, but I want to say on average probably 75% of the facilities that we looked at were probably repairs, and maybe at 25% that was replaced. I don't know if the other teams probably had something similar to that. For the most part, I think we only had to visit the sites once, so we got all the information we need. It's kind of like if you're going out and doing a topo survey, you don't want to have that surveyor having to go out multiple times. It doesn't make any sense. You want to get all the information right the first time. Some of these sites, we linked up with FEMA, and some of them we did on our own because they maybe already looked at it. That was one thing that was really valuable. The 3 that we worked with from FEMA, and I got pictures of them later on, but they were all, one of them I know, I think he was like a semi-retired, he was a professor at the engineering school there. Extremely knowledgeable engineers, a ton of experience. And it was really interesting, even when we took like a lunch break to just, listen, just taking in all the information. Might have been something they talked about with just the past history of Puerto Rico and the relationship with the U.S. or just different things. You're just trying to kind of take that all in, kind of their perspective on things. And in the construction of some of the facilities. Me being in North Dakota, we build things, you know, you want to keep the heat in there. So we're building things totally different for a house than, you know, down there you want to get the heat out. So just how things were constructed was totally different than what I'm used to seeing. So, you know, it's really valuable kind of learning that information from them. So available tools, we're all familiar with Google Earth. We use that sometimes. A lot of these estimates is all based on square footage. I think that was kind of discussion maybe in the very first presentation of the day. But in RS means you can look at, you know, locality. In this case, I think it was San Juan, but it had like a price per square foot for construction down there. But then you also have to add a multiplier because, okay, the demand was sky high with all the reconstruction that had to happen. That's really hard to put you knew it had to be higher than what it said in RSV. We kind of tried to do the best we can with that. On our reports, we had to look at FEMA and flood maps. I think the later teams maybe didn't have to focus on that quite as much, but they just did that. Captain Cruz was really instrumental with, he had the contacts for all the different facilities, whether it's clinics, and he set up with certain times to meet with them. And that was extremely important for us to try to get those timelines. Okay, we got to be there at 9 in the morning to meet with this person. We want to make sure, you know, if you drove in Puerto Rico, the traffic would be pretty unpredictable, and definitely different than driving in North Dakota, I know that. So you want to, you know, we had those contacts, so that was really critical. One thing that was a lot better too, compared to when we were there in October, was a lot of cell coverage was much better, so communication was definitely easier than it was, you know, the first month after Hurricane Maria. Like I mentioned, with the FEMA engineers, our local knowledge was really critical. It was really nice to work with them because we were looking at the same scope of work. We'd look at things and be like, okay, if you see this as an issue, you guys see the same thing. Otherwise, if we're comparing apples to oranges, it's kind of a pointless exercise. So, and then problem solving skills has been mentioned before, but as engineers, we're problem solvers. So, one thing I know that the SG mentioned is, and I think that was good to hear that, was, you know, you realize as engineers, we can be utilized more than we have been in the past. We can do a lot more than just, you know, logistics. We can, you know, there's all kinds of things we can do. This is a good example. So just FEMA flood maps on the left side. So there's just an example of the scope of work with the Corps of Engineers that we had access to. That was really helpful. And then just having a game plan, I think that was a big map we had set up. That was just for San Juan. I think it was all the facilities just in San Juan. I know this was mentioned in October when I was there, but feeding the beast, so there's always information that has to be sent up. The JFO had moved from the convention center. It was at a media center. It was still pretty big, but probably half the size of what it was in the fall. But for us, Captain Cruz, I think, worked a lot of information. We basically reported to him, you know, accountability when we had stuff done, and he knew the following day we'd have that report done by the end of the day. So it really worked out well with kind of operation tempo and when they could expect information. We were limited we just had one coordination meeting a week that we had to attend. Other than that, we were out in the field or working on reports. So that was, I guess, in any deployment, it's nice. There's a lot of meetings at times, but the people that are out in the field doing the work, I think that's a really important point, is get them out and work doing the field. If there's coordination that can be done by others that are, you know, in the GFO or whatever, you know, that obviously needs to be done, but try to limit the amount of meetings that people out in the field have to do. We did have a lot of emails that were kind of not necessarily directly related, but it was kind of good information to have. Us, you know, email you kind of skim through and get the general gist of what's maybe going on that day. And I'm sure the other groups probably have those emails that I think came out from the FEMA liaison. So I'll show a couple pictures here, but this is an issue. We had to note the lack of O&M or questionable construction that maybe happened on some of these, because some of the facilities we looked at, you could tell, okay, there's probably issues before the hurricane, so you have to kind of discern, you know, what you're seeing. Some of these will be pretty obvious. So the picture on the left, the roof actually is in pretty decent shape, but like all the AC units had been moved. Well, when you looked at, for some reason, whatever contractor did the work years ago never anchored down any of the AC units. mean, in North Dakota, those would get blown around by the prairie winds. I mean, so it's something that has to be addressed, but it's something that has to be noted that, hey, this needs to be fixed in the future. The middle picture, that's Ramon, I think, from FEMA that's standing there. But it hadn't rained for a good couple of days, and you can see all kinds of water in that gutter. Well, further down the line, it's kind of hard to see in this picture, it's a little bit grainy, but there's all kinds of cattails growing up. And this isn't like a green roof or some kind of fancy, construction that we're coming up with. And then the best picture on the right there, that's a 12-foot tall tree there growing in the gutter of that building. So that obviously hasn't been addressed for a number of years. Like on the middle one, we did have leaking that was happening kind of below that area, and it's like, okay, did that happen from the hurricane, or has this been an issue for years and years and just not addressed? So they did have, I think, a hazard mitigation program. I don't remember all the details on that, but there was ways to address that if we're going to be fixing issues. There was mitigation issues you can address to get things up to speed. So kind of finishing up here, so lessons learned, like was mentioned, you want to stay in your lane, you want to stay focused on what you're there for, but obviously if you see something wrong, say something. Being engineers, or just, things that are obvious, maybe other people see it, they just figure, well, someone else will take care of that, but you gotta bring it up and mention it. Be efficient with your time and time of others. Trying to be on time for the meetings we had, being efficient with what we had to look at. It's hot, it's pretty obvious. Accountability is key. Let people know when we're done with where we're at and where we're going. And like was mentioned, overlap with all on teams is critical. So real quick, this is if you see something wrong, say something. The one on the left, that real fact sheet looks like, oh, it looks pretty good. It's a little bit grainy picture, but there was issues there with they put in brand new AC units and nothing was secured down. So it's like the same issues we've seen in other places. So we addressed that. The one in the middle, there was water. I don't know how long the leak had been there. You can tell all kinds of vegetation, but there was water leaking right out of the building. Not just like a little trickle, like it was coming pretty good. And then we got a hold of the facility manager, like, what's the issue here? And he's like, oh yeah, it's been leaking for a while. It's like, okay, we'll get a address this. And then the one on the right, I like trees and stuff, and this is a beautiful tree, but it's right next to the building. You see the roots. One of the roots was kind of going into the foundation. It's just a matter of time before that's a huge tree too, by the way, that drops on that tin roof and causes major issues. One thing not shown is there's a power line that's kind of on the other side of it. It's overhanging over a power line, and this is just, I'm actually surprised from Hurricane Maria that this didn't drop on the building, but things like this, we're like, hey, we need to get this addressed. Okay, so I got a little bit long there, but I don't know if there's any quick questions or any discussion from any of the other teams that were there. Anything that. I know it's the end of the day too. So.
Just a real quick question. In terms of RSEs and the ways and how you put the estimates together, was that directed by Army Corps or FEMA? Is that one of the requirements?
We kind of looked through, and Captain Miguel Cruz, I mentioned he's not an engineer, but he's like, I don't know all the specifics on what needs to be done. We looked through it, it just looked like that was an acceptable format. We actually got together with the 3 FEMA counterparts and wanted to make sure, hey, does this seem like this is something that'll work for you guys as well? And they said, yeah. So we just kind of, the other thing we did with our reports is we actually used basically the preliminary engineering report that IHS uses. We got a copy of that, and that was kind of our format we used. So some of this stuff, it was kind of more, it's figured out as we go. There wasn't really a template. It's like, we just kind of, I think with that, we kind of brought it up the chain, or maybe brought that to FEMA too and said, hey, this is the format we want to use for our basic preliminary engineering report, because it was kind of similar to what the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers used for their scope of work. And it made sense, so that's what we did on that too.
I was curious, were there other teams doing similar activities in different regions of the island?
No, we covered the whole island.
Okay.
So we had like one day, we were in San Juan. The next day we were on the other end of the island. And we just kind of scheduled it from that. And I think the other teams probably did the same thing. Just and some of the sites, I
So
think.
the scope was the island.
Yep, yep, the whole island. Anything else?
Is part of your requirements, did you have to use, like Buy American and Davis-Bacon wages, and follow UBC?
I think that was probably more in the weeds than we got. We just kind of, I imagine that's probably built into RSV, some of that. We were doing the real preliminary, just get the cost estimates, send it up the chain, and then they're gonna either approve it or not. I really don't know the status of you know, where that's at in the process.
What did you guys use for contingency amounts?
Like a percent?
Yeah.
I wanna say it was like 7.5% or 10% or something, so that's standard. But we definitely, the rates they had, we bumped them up some, but we did try to talk to FEMA. That's one thing, we can't see their estimates. We're supposed to do our own independent estimate, but we're like, okay, hey, what do you guys, you know, kind of give us some kind of, I don't know, perspective on what you guys are doing, so we're kind of like not way off the right field with something totally different. But
So was the plan to use local contractors or American contractors?
well, that was kind of more further along in the process. You know, we were just doing the preliminary cost estimates. There were a lot of contractors there, and even in October we were there. They were from all over the U.S. I mean, I think they were U.S. contractors, but I remember seeing like a place from Ohio. They were working on the generators, and yeah, I mean, a lot of Army Corps of Engineers people there even later on too. So.